All right, welcome everybody. We are back here at the MongoDB Twitch stream. Today I have some, again, special guests, but this time the focus is not going to be on me today or Nick. Less me, more on Nick. Today we're going to have Barry O'Neill on here as well. Would you both like to introduce yourselves?
Barry, I'll let you take it first.
Okay, cool. I'll go first. My name is Barry O'Neill. I'm a technical services engineer at MongoDB. Previously, I was a curriculum engineer, so you might recognize my voice from some of the university videos, although you probably play them at like 1.5 speed, so it might sound a bit faster. But yeah, that's me.
And then I'm Nick from the developer relations team.
And if you've been joining us every other Wednesday, you'll know that Nick and I do the GameDev stream. And so we're going to continue that today. We're going to do a little bit differently. So is it every quarter or every year we do this? I think it's every year.
It's every year, yeah.
Every year, our company, as well as I think a bunch of other companies, we're not the only one, holds something called Skunk Works. And for those of you who don't know what that is, it's kind of like this 1 week time where the engineering department just kind of puts everything on hold. I'm talking code freeze, design freeze, everything. Everyone just stops what they're doing. And we have an internal hackathon. And we hack on all kinds of different things, whether that's using our product, whether that's using something completely new. We just take 1 week to just kind of chill and work on something fun and something awesome. And so I'm here today with Nick and Barry because that's something awesome that they worked on is actually called the Untitled Leafy Game.
We put a lot of time.
We didn't have a name for it.
Well, sometimes that's what makes it the best, right? And so, yeah, a lot of this stream today is going to be talking about what they have built, how they built, the problems they came across. Remember, this was done within a week, and where they came up with the idea and all of that. So I will turn it over to you, Nick and Barry.
Yeah, so I mean, even though that we got technically a week for Skunkworks, I think we actually had like 3 days to work on it because it had to be submitted on the fourth day, right, Barry?
Yeah, it was pretty much 3 days. We had to record a video for presentation on the third day, obviously, because we can't present in person anymore. So yeah, this was a three-day project. Full disclaimer.
Very formal thing.
Well, even harder restrictions, right? Sometimes you get a week, sometimes 3 days is very little time, especially if you want to build a full game. So
yeah. So I just shared my screen. We're gonna just walk you through the final product here that we built, and then we're gonna walk you through what we did to build it. Yeah, I can zoom in. That better?
Thank you. Does this look familiar, chat? Does this look like anything to you?
Maybe. So we have our leaf character, which we'll call Leafy, or you can assign it whatever name that you prefer, right? Mm-hmm. And we have these very familiar looking question boxes. And this time when you actually hit a question box, you get a question regarding MongoDB. And Barry, you want to talk about the thought process behind what these questions were related to?
Yeah, so initially when we tried to do this, we wanted to make it sort of functional for people trying to learn about MongoDB. So the original thought process was that we would have practice questions for our practice exam for certification. But because we were limited in time, we decided to go with true-false questions. So what we did was myself and Nick sat down and we banged our heads together and thought up a lot of true and false questions about MongoDB. And then as you progress through the levels, you hit a box. And when you hit the box, you get a question. Every question you get right, you get a point. And every question you get wrong, you don't get a point. And we had some good fun with people internally in MongoDB testing their MongoDB knowledge to see, who got the highest score.
So we have someone in the chat here saying, woohoo, Flappy Leafy.
Yeah, it's a difficult game.
Yes. Well, that is, I
Did
can understand.
Did we put the link in the chat for people to try it themselves?
Let me do that right now. So if you're seeing this, let me grab it really quick. If you're seeing this game right now, you can totally try it out yourself. Put this link in the chat there. So please feel free to try out this super awesome game and learn about MongoDB in the process too. Gamification at its best.
Remember, this was a 3-day product, so expect there's going to be some flaws, a lot of flaws, but it was cool. Should we dive into some of the how we did it kind of stuff, Barry?
Yeah, I suppose so.
Where do you want to start? Should we start with the back end or the front end?
I suppose we'll start with the back end, right? Or I don't know. What do you think? You guys have been doing some Unity stuff on this stream before, so maybe the front end stuff might be a bit more familiar to people, and then we can show them how we linked it up to Atlas and Realm. Make sense? Yeah.
I'd love to know how you designed the levels to start with. It's a little bit different than our game that we've been doing. And also, we have a question in the chat. Do you guys continue planning, or do you guys plan on continuing development of this game?
If we could get buy-in from the company, sure. Otherwise, maybe we expand it at the next Skunkworks.
Yeah, we have big plans. First-person shooter, certification prep game, 3D.
Because that'll go well, right?
Will there be a hard mode for this?
Well, we could shoot at leaves or something like that.
All right. So this level is absolutely wonderful. I love how it looks. So tell us how you built it.
Yeah, so we used a familiar concept to what we've been doing in the Plummeting People series, and that's with palettes. So we have a grid, and we have a palette editor, and in this case, we didn't handcraft those graphics. We actually used a free asset pack from the Unity store, because our own hand drawings were very crummy, not worth sharing. So with this pack that we downloaded, I mean, it had various assets. We used some of them. We didn't use any of the backgrounds, but we did use the terrains. I know that it's small here. Let's see if I can zoom in. Nice. So this is a square by square kind of thing. I don't know if you can see when I select it, but each square would be a square on the actual scene. So it's kind of like Microsoft Paint almost. And there was a lot of cursing involved when we were creating these levels, right, Barry?
Day one was you'd need a lot of bleeps if we had been doing this on day one.
Why is that? This seems to be, I mean, it looks nice, right? It looks like almost like a Lego system for building a level. So
well, I know Nic had been doing a lot of Unity on this, but I just jumped in at the deep end. So I was trying to teach myself Unity and work through this to get something that looked nice on the first day. So there was a lot of to and fro between myself and Nic about why isn't this working and the likes, but we got there.
A lot of our problems were around, if you notice on the grid area on the left, I have a ground boundary and trap, and we've suffered from this on the Plummeting People stream too, I think, Adrian, where we draw stuff on the wrong game object.
Yes.
And then it throws us off. I think at one point, both me and Barry had to trash our entire project and start over because we just destroyed it so bad.
Oh, were you just going along and kept creating on the wrong layer?
Yes, there was a few things, and then we were taking a level each, and we were to and from with each other on our private chat, and a few times we just got ourselves into such a rabbit hole. We're like, I need to blow this away, man. We need to start again. Yeah, and then Unity has that really nice thing where you can work away and think that you're making changes and saving, right? And you're in play mode, and you're like, oh no, that was like a half an hour wasted.
All of that time wasted. Yeah. Ooh, that must hurt, especially during a hackathon.
If you're in game mode and you're making changes, it doesn't save when you exit out of game mode. Note to self.
So before you continue, I have a quick question here. Is this open source? Do you plan on accepting PRs from the community in case they can't wait until the next Skunkworks?
So it's on GitHub. Honestly, we forgot to make this public before the stream went live. But after the stream, we'll go ahead and make it public. We're going to produce some blog content around it too. So there's definitely going to be some links. If you want to create PRs, definitely. Why not? We'd love it.
Keep an eye out for that. Hello, Anstefa. Go ahead, Nic.
Yeah. So I mean, this is the tile editor. So basically, we had ground tiles, and this is anything that we would want to collide with that wouldn't hurt our player. So anything that we wanted to apply physics to, we'd have the tile map collider. The rigid body would be static because we don't want it to fly around on the screen. We added some physics material to add friction, so that way we don't get stuck on a wall or anything.
Right.
It did cause some weird side effects that people seem to enjoy, where we kind of slide up the wall when we're jumping.
Can you demo that, or has that been fixed?
No, it hasn't been fixed. So, whoops. See how I kind of launched up the wall there? So it's just the nature of our many bugs that we have inside of this project.
And Steph is asking, what about the Among Us project? When are we going to start that one?
I think we actually have to play that game first. I've never played it.
I know, I've seen it. I've seen it played on Twitch, but I have not played it myself. Well, that is a cool feature with the friction.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah. There are a couple of interesting features, like the one where you can keep banging the same box and work up your score, but you're only cheating yourself. You're only cheating yourself
Out of some knowledge.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, hiking up that score nonstop.
If only certifications were this easy.
Yeah, we're not going to roll a certification exam into the Leafy game just yet.
Yeah. No Capcom cheat codes or anything or anything like that.
Sweet. So how did you decide on which questions to use? I mean, obviously, I know for the sake of time, you chose true-false questions, but did you just choose the ones that came top of mind, or was there any more thought behind which questions you wanted to be part of the game?
Well, initially we did think about we were going to have a subject area per level. We were going to have one sharding level, one replication level, but we had 3 days, so our grand plans didn't really work out that way. So we ended up just creating some random questions, random true-false questions, and put them into the game. So
understood. Oh, I enjoyed the level. You guys chose a really good asset pack to work with. It brings out all the nostalgia.
Yeah, we were lucky as well that the Leafy character itself, we actually, one of the guys in our design team, Steve, shout out to Steve, actually helped us out with the Leafy. He'd been messing around animating the leaf before, and I just remembered, so I gave him a shout, and he gave it to us for the game. Before that, it was just a white square, and it just didn't look as cool. But
that's nice.
Looks nice.
That is always nice, especially it can get really competitive with this hackathon here. So that's always nice to hear that people are still willing to help each other out.
Yeah, it's good. It likes cross-team collaboration.
Yeah, we got. He actually gave us. There was like 100 frames in this Leafy animation. We only used a few of them, but it definitely helped compared to the crude stuff that we were drawing prior. Didn't look that great.
Can you show us more about that? Which frames did you use, or did you use that to create sort of a like idle animation and jumping animation?
Yeah, there was no idle animation that we used. Basically, we just used a walking animation, and we just flipped it for the walking left, walking right. So I don't know if it's large enough. I won't be able to zoom in, unfortunately. But there's what is there like?
I can see the little legs moving. Yeah. But that's always nice, again, during a hackathon, it's always nice to just have all of those assets available, and then you just pick and choose what you need.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the asset store from Unity, just having that, and even the whole pack that we got, being that it was free, that's incredible.
Yeah, it looks really good.
Yeah. So about how long did it take you to, after you've restarted, how long did it take you for each portion of building this game? Talk about the timeline of how long it took you and what problems you ran into by the time you were able to record the demo video.
I think that we spent the first day, Nick, pretty much trying to troubleshoot getting the colliders to work, getting the drop down menu to work, and we literally just had a very, very small section of the game to more get the functionality to work, like things like the camera, the way it moved, and the collider in the boxes and all that stuff, the Unity UI stuff. And then after that, I think building out the levels was probably the least challenging part of it, Nick, right?
Yeah, I think the most complicated part was in that drop down menu for the questions. That was just tough. So you can see on my screen here, It's a little lighter gray because it's disabled by default since it doesn't get enabled until you collide. But it's a Unity UI element. So we have a rectangle to represent the background of our modal. Okay. We have the text that changes based on our HTTP request to MongoDB. We have the drop-down itself, which has components that gets populated, which in this case were hard-coded in there because we didn't have time to have A, B, and C questions or anything like that. And then basically the submit. But the problem I think that we had, the largest problem was that there's a weird issue with Unity where when you're working with child elements and you're trying to access certain elements from others, there's race conditions, and it caused all kinds of trouble for us. But I mean, we could talk about it in the code as well.
Yeah. What kinds of conditions? I'm interested now to see. That was my first question, was how you've built the modals and the questions, and if you've used specific menu game objects. But so
I'll start at the top. Sure. So first of all, you have those familiar question boxes, right? So I click on one. This is question 1. It's just a standard sprite. It's the rigid body and collision boxes and all of that good stuff. But it also has some public variables.
Okay.
And maybe this would be a good segue into the backend first, because it has to do with some of our question information. So maybe we want to do a flip into the Realm stuff, Barry.
Yeah, cool. If you want to share my screen, I can show you guys that.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Can you guys see my screen? Because I had to move off the actual stream. So
we can. Do you want to zoom in just a little bit?
Yeah, no problem. Okay, so for the backend, you can see there that Nic mentioned in the actual Unity game that we had a unique identifier for each question, and we just used like a string 1, 2, 3. We spelled out the word 1, 2, or 3, and so on. So first thing we needed to do was create an Atlas cluster, and we created a free tier cluster, and we needed to insert the questions into the cluster. So if we go into without giving away all the answers for the game, I'll just show you one. I'll do the cheat. So if you go into the collections view here in the Atlas cluster, you can see that we have a very simple schema. It's just the question text, the problem ID, which is 1, and the subject area, which is sharding. And that goes back to the initial idea that we had, that we were going to have one subject area per level. We ended up just having, random questions, but that's an idea for the future. And then the answer, which is true or false. So shard keys are mutable, false, and might be false for too long because we're planning on introducing mutable shard keys. But that's the schema that we used, and that's what we were what we're accessing in the game. So all that stuff just resides in our Atlas cluster, and that's not really the exciting part of this, right? The exciting part is that we can access it using Realm. So if we go back to our cluster view, our project view here, and go into the game cluster project, and up the top of the screen, we've got our Realm tab. So this is how we actually linked our Atlas cluster to Unity. In Realm, we created a new Realm app, and you can see here that we call it Skunkworks, which is the name of our internal hackathon. And we've got all the stats here for the amount of requests that have been, the app ID. We didn't use the app ID because there's no SDK for Unity, so we had to come up with a workaround, and the workaround that we came up with was to use webhooks. So
looking at our usage, we've already got 634 people this month.
634 requests, so that's like 300 questions. Not bad going, right? It's pretty good.
And some people practicing their MongoDB knowledge.
So if we go into the third-party services here, you can see that we've got the webhooks service that we added. So we've got 2 webhooks. One is get question and one is check answer. Get question is HTTP GET request, and it basically pulls the question down from the endpoint to the game. And this is the function that's fired once we hit the endpoint. What we're doing is we're basically pulling the question ID
Can you
the
zoom
game
in just a
section.
bit?
Yeah, sorry. So we're
There we
pulling
go.
the question from the game database in the question collection.
Mm-hmm.
We're pulling the question based on problem ID, which is that string that we saw, the 1, 2, 3. And then we're projecting out the problem ID and the question text because that's all we're interested in, right? We don't want to pull back the subject matter at the moment because we're not going to have a subject area per level. So all we're bringing back is the problem ID and the question text. And then it just sends that back to the game. And then we've got a second webhook, which is check answer, which here in the questions you can see is a HTTP post request. So it posts the answer back to the endpoint. And then we have a function here, JavaScript function, which then again pulls the question from the game database in the questions collection, and it does a find one based on the problem ID, and it filters for answer, and that's how we check. It returns true or false to check if the answer is correct. And that's pretty much the back end. That's how we implemented the back end. I don't know if that explains it very well or if I went too quickly through that, but
No.
my first time on a Twitch stream, so bear with me with this.
No
Yeah,
worries.
it's all good.
That went pretty well, and it was a good explanation. I have a couple questions. So I understand that this was a hackathon, but so if you had let's say this first question here, is this always going to be the same question? Or I guess in the next iteration, would you randomize it to have different questions?
At the moment, it's always the same question because it's hard-coded.
Yeah.
If you check the variable there, it's hard-coded into each box.
Right, because
Yeah.
you're checking against that the ID, right? The particular one that you're searching for on the
One-
function.
Two things that we thought about when we were doing this was, one, we were going to actually have a request to Realm at the start of the level unload that would pull all the questions down and then populate the boxes. But we decided for the hackathon that we would, have each request. Every time we hit the box, we'd have a request.
And that's totally fine. It's always interesting to see what concessions we come to for the sake of time, especially in a hackathon. So that's totally understandable.
We also, wanted to abuse MongoDB in the sense that it's not as exciting if we're just downloading all the questions from the beginning and not constantly through the game.
If I'm not mistaken, that's a category that you won, right? Best abuse of MongoDB Realm or use of Realm?
Yeah, we tied it. We tied it with one of our other colleagues, Juan. Shout out to Juan. And we're getting a T-shirt. It's going to be framed on the wall back here.
Yeah.
Sweet. We'll have to have you back so we can see the wall with a shirt. Sweet. So now you have your questions. I'm assuming, was there anything else in the script that you wanted to show us? So I'm assuming.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to walk you through it. But 5, remember we spelled them out. They're very kind of lame IDs that we used, but it helped us when it came to each of the boxes. The question modal was we wanted to assign which modal to be used for the question. There's only ever going to be one, but we needed to do that so that way we can enable and disable it, so that way it's not constantly on the screen. And then the score, so that way we can keep track of a global score within the game. So each question box will be able to control all of that. Let's see. Oh, go on.
I was going to say, can you talk more about, you're reusing that same modal, right, for the questions to be populated in? You're not recreating
we are.
a new game object every single time?
We're reusing it, and if you play the game, you'll probably notice that there's a small delay between it changing the question. It's because it's just recycling. I don't know if Unity would have any kind of performance impact if we had a bunch of disabled modals in there. I figure the more you have going on in your game, the slower it's going to get, but I could be wrong.
I mean, I would assume reusability is something you strive for, but I am also just as new in Unity as you are, so I don't know if that's a best practice or not to have one that's reused or multiple that's generated.
The three of us are not game developers, so this is a big time learning experience.
So anyone in the chat, if you know that's a best practice or not to reuse, let us know. Go on, Nick. Always
Yeah,
like
for
to see
sure.
code.
Yeah, so this is some bad C# code that we've been working on. It doesn't at all follow how you should write C#, but it works.
It was written during a hackathon, so you get a pass.
Yes. We haven't done any cleanup. We kind of haven't touched it since the event, which was in October, right? Was it? Yeah.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, last week of October.
Yeah, which is cool. So I mean, when the question box is added to the screen, so the start, so that's before it's actually collided with. We're actually getting each of the child elements within that parent modal. That's why there's a parent and child. So because we want to be able to access and change from the specific question box that we've hit the question information. So we're getting all of that information at the start.
Okay.
If we collide with the question box, so we're gonna see if the collider was with the player, which it should always be in this example. I mean, we didn't have any kind of enemies or anything. So if the player collides with the question box, the modal, which is by the start of the project disabled, we enable it. So that way it's not invisible. It's kind of like in HTML with the display none. We're just changing it to a different display. This was a magic line right here, right, Barry?
That one, yeah. I haven't got a lot of hair to lose, but I pulled my hair out for a while trying to see how we could stop movement. And then one Google search went the right way, and we discovered that it was one line of code. So I needn't have stressed.
Yeah, it stops the frames from updating. So time scale of 0, everything stops except for kind of UI interaction, and then time scale of 1, everything's back to normal. I think if you speed it up, it goes even faster. I'm not sure.
So you needed this when you were answering a question? Is that why you needed this?
Yeah, just
because we don't want.
Sorry, go ahead, Nick. We wanted to have, when the boxes hit, everything is frozen in time until you get answered the question. We didn't want the leaf character to drop back down in the background and you'd be able to run away from the question that you couldn't answer.
Ah, okay. That makes sense.
And likewise, it would be useful if you actually had enemies in the game. You don't want them to kind of attack you while you're stuck answering questions like Dark Souls style, right?
That's funny that you say that. I just read something where it said Dark Souls, Mario Kart, and Fall Guys are the top 3 most frustrating games of 2020.
Yeah.
So
there you go.
We don't want that.
No.
Well, then you've set yourselves up for success then once you add enemies on the next iteration.
Seriously, right? What would they be, like little relational databases walking around with arms and legs?
That would be hilarious. Yes.
Tables. Walking tables.
Yes.
Seriously.
Oh, you need to write these ideas down. They're great.
I know, for our revenge for next year.
All right. So time scale 0 so that it's all pretty much frozen, right?
Yeah, and then we make a request.
Okay.
So requests, since they do HTTP, you need to kind of do that asynchronously. So you have to use a coroutine in Unity, and we have this function called getQuestion, which we're passing in the question ID, which we have access to because it's on the question box itself. We set it as a public variable. And then the callback, kind of like what you would see in a JavaScript promise or something like that. So with the get question, we have our hard-coded webhook URL with the ID that we're passing, and that just changed it. Sorry, and we're making the request. We're parsing it into a database model. So if we look at the database model over here, it's just what fields were in that document in JSON that we just received. And by parsing it, we're converting it into something we can actually work with in Unity. So where it's like marshalling and unmarshalling the data before we can use it. So we get that data back, assuming there was no error. And this is kind of where we set the text. and we have to configure a listener for the submit button. And this is where things got a little hairy, because the way that Unity does stuff, like if we were to do this, because this is kind of the on-collide, and basically what happens, it would do all of the question box at one time. So when we start the application, it'll do all of the question boxes at the same time. And as a result, if we were to hit any one of those question boxes, it would basically get the last question that was generated. So that's the one that it kept.
It's kind of like it would keep calling it and keep changing the child components until it got to the last call, which is the last question. Is that what you're
Yes,
saying?
and
Okay.
we had to basically do some Unity voodoo to make sure that we were using like copies of variables rather than pointers. And through that, we were able to keep individual questions and these asynchronous calls to the specific question box itself.
Gotcha.
It was a nightmare, but we got it.
What other nightmares did you encounter? I want to keep going with this subject because going through hackathons, it's a lot, especially if they're like 24-hour ones, but even 3-day ones, that's also stretches your brain. So aside from these, what were some of the worst things that you came across where you're like, you know what, let's just give up?
Barry, you go first.
I think like the worst part of the whole, I suppose the worst time frame of the whole hackathon was the first day. Nick had used Unity somewhat. I hadn't really used it a lot. I hadn't coded a huge amount of C#. And I was like, oh my, what have we gotten ourselves into? Like, so at the start, it was pretty hard because the most rudimentary things like assigning variables in the Unity UI to different game objects, stuff like that is tricky, and it can hang you up pretty quick. When you don't have a variable assigned, you can't use it in code. So that was something that got us quite a bit. And yeah, that was the main thing I could think. It was like the first day trying to get used to the Unity UI, the way it handles variables, the way you have to assign all the variables in the drop downs in the UI. Yeah, it was challenging.
Would you say 3 days is a good timeline to give you enough time to get comfortable with it and still make meaningful progress in the hackathon? Especially as someone coming to Unity as a new person to Unity?
Yeah, I think if you're following along with YouTube tutorials and trying to make a very simplistic game, maybe without the webhook stuff, you would definitely get it done in 3 days. I think the webhook stuff was probably the most challenging, Nick, to get working right. Okay, am I right?
Yeah, I think it was more the UI stuff around the webhook stuff, not necessarily the webhook itself.
Yeah, just like with the way the Unity UI is designed, it was challenging.
Would you recommend this method of learning Unity, just signing up for a hackathon, especially if you don't know, or would you recommend the same group, like at least have one person who's somewhat familiar, and then you can get the group going?
I don't know. I think I'm the type of person that learns by being under serious pressure. If I had the opportunity to go and learn Unity in a week and I had no pressure, I would probably just go and find something shiny like Game of Thrones and watch that instead. So for me, it's better to do a hackathon, and you have to learn.
I totally agree. Do you feel that way, Nick? Do you need to feel like some sort of pressure on you for you to do something?
I need to get dumped into it, and there needs to be pressure. Otherwise,
there will be consequences. Right?
Yes.
We have a question here. It says, did you consider another tool or engine for the project? Was there any time, whether that was at the beginning when you're like, oh no, this is overwhelming, I don't know this, or even halfway through the project where you're like, this is too cumbersome, maybe we should try something different?
Didn't we talk about Phaser at first?
We were looking at Phaser briefly, and then we arrived at Unity. I'm not too sure if we really dug into Phaser too much.
So same thing. The need for pressure subsides with time, by the way. So what made you go against Phaser, even though you considered it? Was it too far? Were you too far into Unity already at that point?
Unity's
Sure.
just cool.
Okay, so because it was cool, you continued to stay with it? Was that it?
So,
Yeah.
Valid. Hey, valid answer.
Something like that.
Yeah, or Karen's also asking Unreal. Did you consider Unreal Engine since you were going with platforms you weren't familiar with yet anyway?
So unfortunately, I don't know any C++, so that was a big turnoff for me on Unreal. Barry, what about you?
yeah, I think like you had some experience with Unity, and then strangely enough, my son actually was playing with Unity the week before, so I think it was just top of both of our minds. We're like, okay, we'll give it a try. There, like Phaser was just a fleeting thing. I don't think we definitely didn't look into Unreal though.
Nice.
Yeah.
I've been watching this series, and it's this guy who just does all these really ridiculous games, but he says with RTX on. He just builds all these games in Unreal Engine. It's hilarious. It's like Flappy Bird on Unreal Engine. So you should check that out.
Did we
So
lose Barry just now?
I don't.
Headphones
still
die?
Yeah, possibly. Still with us, Barry?
Yeah,
Just a
my
second.
headphone battery went.
Oh,
2 seconds. I'll need to
No
plug it
problem.
into charge.
what were you saying, Adrian?
No, I was going to ask you. So over the span of these 3 days, you obviously still were able to build something awesome, and you even won in a category. So that speaks to what you can build in 3 days. Is there anything you would have done differently, looking back?
I personally would have never attempted to draw my own graphics. I would have gone straight to the Unity asset store. We lost some time trying to come up with our own stuff. It was
Really?
just not worth it.
How long did you spend, and do you still have remnants of this?
No, it looks like most of them were removed from the project, but there were some pretty bad remnants. What do you think, Barry?
Yeah, I think like that we did waste a lot of time with that, but I think as well, I probably would have researched a bit more how to get the multi STEM question with more answers before we started. I think if I had had more time to research that, it probably would have been a better result. But I think overall, like, pretty happy with what we came up with in the 3 days.
I think
Yeah.
it looks
Yeah.
pretty good. Can you show us the ending at the end, or one of the last questions?
The last questions, or just what happens at the end?
Like, can you go through the whole level and
Get a
let's
little
just?
Well, yeah. If I'm
let's
good
see.
enough, I haven't been able to do it all morning, so
Can you not play? Can you not finish your own game? Is that what you're saying, Nick?
yeah, I made it too hard.
Oh, you're just gonna skip the questions. So, do you
Oh, you
have
want me to go through the questions?
Well, that's my next question. Did you build it so that you have to answer the questions and score, or do you just have to make it to the end of the level without answering?
If you want to
You
be able to
don't
brag
have to
about your
answer.
score.
I mean, there's no incentive to get the score, right? Other than your own glory, right?
Yeah, it's just to get a high score. So there was a plan to, at the start of this, we had planned to implement a leaderboard, and we had very, very grand plans for what we were going to do, but we had to cut our losses after a while.
Of course. There we go. I just wanted to see. Yay! You got the trophy.
Should we try to create a new level, third level? We could do it on the stream
Sure.
and maybe add some more questions.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's crack it open. What do you guys think?
Yeah,
Thumbs
let's
up.
go.
You got time, Barry?
Yeah, I've got time. I'm good.
Sweet.
Yeah. So maybe let's clone one of these scenes, and then we'll kind of work our way backwards there. So let's see.
Can you make a fall leafy level as requested by chat?
A fall leafy. Well, we can use whatever's in our asset folder. So if you can find us some assets, sure. You see
What
a
does that
copy
mean? Where we
here?
make Leafy like really wilted and sort of off
Yes.
orange color
He's seen some stuff. Maybe he has a hole or two,
on the last level, yeah, where he's just
A
been
little-
through hell and back.
little crinkled.
I'll just call this level 2. I don't know. Doesn't really matter.
Hey, it's keeping in line with the question ID, so that's fine with
Yeah.
me.
All right, so it's a copy, and what we can do is maybe I'll work our way backwards, right?
Oh.
So
So chat says apply a color filter to make it a fall level. I've actually not done
we
that.
could try. Yeah, we could try to add a color filter.
That'd be cool,
Let's
right?
go ahead. Yeah, we could try it. So
That
the
way you
cool
don't
thing
have
about
to
this,
fully build a full new level. Or you can change it a bit too.
yeah, let's change it. Nobody wants to play the same level twice, and we can make it extra hard, right? Something
Sure.
that even
Just-
Adrian won't be able to beat.
Just make the steps shaped into leaves, I guess. That's
Yeah,
what
the
my-
spikes on the first level were a major bone of contention when we first released this. That was Nick's doing, and everyone was like, "Man, what are you doing to us?"
Really?
Yeah,
Was it
yeah,
pretty
no, like
difficult?
no one could get past them for the first while.
Yeah. So you could actually, since this is a tile map, you can just start erasing things.
Nice.
And because it's 3 different tile map layers, I can accidentally try to erase the wall here, but it's not part of it.
Oh, so
So-
actually, Adrian, you asked earlier on about stuff that we'd hit that was really challenging. Slicing sprites and tile and painting with the tile map was one thing that I hit that was really challenging because you have to slice them up, and then sometimes they were, not filling a square, and it was a pain.
I can see how that would be painful. What's even worse is, like you've mentioned, if you're on the wrong layer and you've been like super detailed with something
Yeah.
and you realize you're on the wrong layer. I bet there's like a shortcut for that or some way to move that onto the right layer. That's got to be something.
It's
That's-
in
Yeah,
there
I'd imagine once
when
you
that
know
happens.
about the UI and the little quirks of it, it's a lot easier. But it's very frustrating when you're just learning and you have to keep trying, you have to keep making these mistakes and going back and undoing everything.
Oh yeah. That's something that I ran into as well with Nick when we were designing our DoorDash level on the game. I'm like, we're on the wrong level.
Yeah. I don't know if there's a way to like do a mass delete. So I'm just manually kind of
Can you
scrapping
select?
through it.
You can select the
There
whole.
is a tool just to select everything, I think.
Yeah. All right. Well, we got most of it gone, and the boundary doesn't really matter. We could change that later.
Sweet. So are
so
we going
let-
for a fall leafy level?
So looking at our asset pack here, this is what we have. So does anything look mildly fall-like in
Can
this
you
level? Should we
zoom
do?
in as much as you can and kind of slowly
We have this
pan? Ooh, yes,
autumn
that,
orange.
I
Is
like that.
That
looks fall.
we could do that.
Fall-y
Uh,
to me.
Yeah, so I mean, with this, there's a lot of imagination involved. And notice how I made sure I just selected ground because that would have already been terrible for us.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, what you got to do is, well, you got to figure out first what you're working with as far as tiles. So that is an end cap tile. These are some middle tiles, right? And then we have another end.
What are they? Do they have some differences between them? They obviously look the same to the.
Yeah, because
eye.
look, if I add that another end, you can see how
okay.
the artist who created these assets, it wasn't meant to be that because of a padding on the border, right?
Gotcha. I see it now.
So we could add some of that. We maybe what kind of imagination should we have? What kind of obstacles?
I think you should have.
Should we have spikes everywhere on this level?
Why? Why do you do this, Nick? This is why no one wants to play your levels.
Yeah.
I think you should have. Do you have anything that resembles lava
Lava in here?
other than spikes? What else could be an obstacle?
Oh, we never had any other we had moving obstacles that we never used in the asset pack because it would have added complexity beyond what we had time for, I think.
Gotcha.
We had like flying saw blades and stuff as part of the asset pack and other kind of shenanigans.
The ground is lava. Yes, that's what I was initially thinking, but I'm not sure. I'm not as good of a level designer as G is.
Yeah, I know, right? So we actually, think we could use just plain red. It would look a little weird.
Maybe you
We
can
have a
have several cliffs where you don't see the bottom, where some bottoms could be okay that you can jump yourself out of, and then others are spikes. Does that make sense?
So you want like a kind of a in Sonic you have some caverns and stuff. Is that what you're talking about?
Kind of. Like you'll be playing among the camera view will be mostly towards the top, so you'll see the openings, but
Yeah.
you won't necessarily know what's on the bottom. It could be some steps on the bottom to get yourself back up, or it could be spikes. You don't know. But the point is to skip over those and not fall down in the first place.
Not sure I understand. Do you understand it, Barry?
I'm not getting it.
Yeah.
Well,
What is this level that you speak of? Is it
Are you
an actual
talking about
game that
having
everybody
like
played?
gaps in the top, Adrian, where you can jump up?
yeah, like so right where you have this floor right now with
Yeah.
your
Or so you can have
leaves.
like a cheat where you can just run along the top.
Kind of, but you see how you have a gap between your leaves and then the next stone that you just placed? There's a square gap there. I'm saying the camera view will only see that part, but let's say
Yeah.
you fell into the gap. When you fell down into the bottom, it could either be spikes or it could be some steps to actually get you out of that well.
Oh, yeah. So like you could
Oh.
have, it's like chance. You could die or you could end up getting out of there.
Yes, that's
So
my
would you
idea.
say you want the
for
camera to
level.
pan down?
Only if you fell in.
The only thing
Only-
is, what way did we? I think you'd have to change the way you died, all right? Because we had once you hit below a certain
Yeah.
Y value, you die.
Okay.
It would change some fundamental logic of the game.
I think you could still do it here. You just have to add a cliff, basically, of all of these leaves up top. But anyway, that was my idea for a level.
You could
in
just make it
case-
so the Y value that you die at is lower, Nick. That would work.
We could try it, sure.
Yeah.
So to do that, what we would want then is
We could.
so I'll make
yeah.
this tall.
I'm just trying
then,
to
right?
introduce a different level since we were trying to
a
create
new
a
element.
different level.
a new
Yeah, like
element to it, yeah?
a mountain or something, a cliff.
Yeah, all right. So let me add some stuff, and you tell me if that meets what you were thinking.
Sure.
All right. So we have some corner pieces. I don't even think that you can jump that high, so I'm gonna remove some of that. We have some filler pieces. I just had to double check that we were on ground because that would have been very unfortunate
Are
if we
you
were
on
not on
ground?
the ground. Yes, we
Yeah,
are.
I see it. I see it.
So now we need our other corner pieces. And you can see how if you have, like if you've hand drawn a map or something like that, the level design process in Unity is pretty slick. Because we've already got the collision information on the ground. It's creating that for us automatically.
Sweet.
So you can see how it's highlighted in green.
Barely, yes, but I believe you.
All right, yeah, because the whole ground layer is all collided up, and it has the physics static physics on it. So it's quite convenient. So we'll add some toppers here. So in this one, maybe this one's fake, right? This one's a real floor. And then this next one we have steps.
Sure. Like this first one, you can leave it blank, which means if Leafy falls
Yeah.
in, they'll still live, unless you have to change the y-axis trigger there. But
So
the
in this
next
one,
will be, yeah.
we'll lower it, right?
Yeah.
How low should we go? We go lower than that?
How low can you go?
Yeah, maybe let's go like that, just to start, right?
That should
and
be fine.
then maybe for steps we have and I noticed that these are different colors. I used the wrong color as part of this this design
fine.
asset pack.
What about those
s-
orange looking?
Yeah, I was
blocks?
thinking if we're going to do a fall teamed level, that orange could work.
Like this.
Yeah.
So maybe we have
They look like Pez tablets to me.
like that kind of thing going on.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll see what it looks like.
Yeah, I mean, like if I hit play right now, right?
Yeah.
So it's loading. All right. So you can't. Oh, you barely were able to make that jump. But yeah, so you could. I mean, you could hardly see it right there.
Right,
I
but
guess you can
see how in frame you can see the starting oh, are you on? Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm on the box,
Gotcha. So if you go back a little bit,
and I'm there too. We could have it like that, kind of like a fake out kind of thing. I don't know.
yeah, but what I was trying to explain was, you know where you started? You see the very first pixel of orange here?
Where I started.
Right there. So
So,
right where you're
right here.
standing right now, right?
Yes.
And then obviously right in front of you is a potential drop. You don't know if it's
Yes.
going to be good or bad.
Yes.
I'm saying as you're playing the whole level looks like this with openings like this throughout the
Got it.
entire screen, except if you happen to fall in one of the openings, it's chance. Either you have steps that you can get yourself back out, or you have the
Oh.
spikes and you die. But you don't know because that's concealed below the camera
The
view
only
at
thing
this
that
point.
I don't know is how do you get the camera to move down? Because it seems that the camera's
So,
just staying static
yeah.
level.
Yeah, no, the camera, we could change the camera. Watch. So I'll open up the code. We'll go to the camera. And in this one, see how it's following the player? We'll just have it follow the player
Oh, right.
instead of being static.
Yeah.
So let's give it a try. And refresh.
I think that's similar to how we changed the camera on our
Yeah. So I'll have to pad it a little bit because it's kind of centered. I have an offset of 4 for the player, but you can see that now. Oops. Yeah.
there you go. Now it kind of looks
So we
more
could add conditional logic to say that if the player is below a certain threshold, then adjust the camera. That's what you wanted originally, right?
yeah, I mean what it's doing right now is what I expect. So
Oh.
if you fell down into one of these holes. So if you were an amazing player and didn't even fall into any of these
Yeah.
wells, you would just skirt through the entire level, right? But if you did
Yeah.
happen to fall, then yes, the camera
You end
would
up
be
there.
nice to follow you. Yeah. It's very similar to how, you would play
Yeah.
in Super Mario.
Yeah, so
follow you around.
let's go ahead and add a buffer then to make it a little more attractive then. So I did 4 there. I think it's positive. We could see what 4 looks like for that as well. So it's a little different, right? It's a little lower. Mm-hmm. But then we would just change it so that way it doesn't move around, and we could adjust that later. So, I mean, what would the rest of the level look like? Any ideas?
Well,
You just have
Be,
a few more of those
be creative.
chasms, but with spikes and some, and
yeah. Unless you
All
have a
right,
better
let me-
idea. That was my initial idea for the other level. So,
I don't have a better idea.
do you have another
the
idea, Barry, for a level?
no, I think it's good because we lull people into a false sense of security with the false sense of positive death with the first levels, and then this one you survive. Everyone's like, whoa.
Yeah. You're like, oh, there will be a floor to catch me. Oh, no.
Why doesn't this look right? What did I do wrong here? Oh, because these are not the right corners. See, this is another thing that was tough for us, learning the asset pack that we were given. So we have that. Maybe should we have the question box right there? We can drag it around.
Sure.
Have it right at the beginning. So this level won't be too heavily thought out, right? In comparison to
No, we just want to show how quickly you can create something else,
yeah.
especially when you have
Yeah, why not?
the aid of an asset pack. This is extremely helpful, especially in the context of a hackathon, right? You're not
Yeah. And
focused on drawing all this extra stuff.
and Barry, let's add a custom question here. How
Cool.
about that?
So,
So I'm going to share your screen.
so you're going to
So that
need
way you can
to
take-
put the ID into that first, Nick, right?
Yeah. So let's create like a sample question with a sample ID. It doesn't have to be our spelled out numbers.
Okay,
Just
cool.
to show that, hey, you know what? This is how easy it is.
So when we want to add a question, we obviously just going to add a document to our Atlas cluster. Here's our free cluster. And if we go to the collections tab here, we can actually just, instead, we could insert a document from scratch, but just to make sure that we're following our schema. I know our schema is extremely simplistic, but if you had a more complex schema, a good way of doing this would be to use the clone option here. So it just basically clones the document, assigns a new unique ID to it, and will give you all the exact same keys and values that you had in the original document. So obviously we don't want to have the same values here. We can we can keep it as sharding. Let's think up a sharding question. Can anyone think of a sharding question?
I don't know, man. You're the former technical
pressure,
training guy.
Okay, well, a chunk is a range of documents partitioned by the shard key.
All right.
That is true.
Perfect. Do you want to give it an idea of, say, Twitch?
Yeah,
Just
I
call
was
it
just going to
Twitch.
suggest that great minds with Twitch. So a chunk is a range of documents partitioned by the shard key. That's true. We've got a problem ID of Twitch and a subject matter, which doesn't really make any difference, but we've got a thread in space.
We don't use it.
We can use it. And the answer is true. So if we click insert, that's inserted into our cluster. We just scroll down to the bottom. We should see it. Where is it?
I'm going to add it here.
Oh. There we go. So there's our document inserted with a different OID. We could have actually used object ID here, but we opted to use these problem IDs we generated ourselves.
Will the typo be a problem on the subject area?
No, it won't be, but I definitely want to fix it because I don't want typos. It could be in the future, so let's fix it now.
Yeah.
Sweet. I have a quick question here. How many terabytes of data before you should consider sharding?
How many terabytes of data before you should consider sharding? We say, whoa, will I stay on this?
Sorry, I'll share my screen.
All right, cool. Yeah, well, we say roughly two terabytes is the figure that we use. And the reason for that is at that size, restoring, backup and restore it can get to a point where it can take a longer period of time. So around 2 terabytes.
I want to follow up on that. So we actually did a podcast episode with Jay Runkle. I think it went out today or yesterday. So we did an episode on sizing. If I recall correctly, I think he said that most customers don't need to shard, but I could be wrong. I'd have to re-listen to the episode, but it's definitely worth a listen.
Yeah, definitely check that out. All those episodes are on there up on the screen. All right, let's continue with our question. We've changed it to a new sharding question, right? And you've assigned it to this the first question box, right?
Yeah, 1. So if I go ahead and I play, let's go ahead and see if it works. Oof! Luckily, I can scale up that wall. Otherwise, we'd have some trouble.
Woo.
That looks right? And you said you put true, right?
True.
So let's try it. It gave us 1 point. Perfect.
Nice.
So do you want to jump back into Atlas and show into Realm, and we can show the requests and the logs?
Yeah, you want me to share your screen?
Yeah.
Here we go.
So if we can actually check to see that request coming through, if we go into our Realm app, we'll open up here. It's called Skunkworks, and we can go into the logs, and we should see our last request here. This was get question, and you can see here the problem ID was Twitch. You can see the different It came from Unity. And then we had a second request, which was check answer. And this is, really useful if you want to check any issues that you're having with any requests to Realm while you're developing an application. You can always go in here, and it gives you a pretty verbose view of what happened with those requests. So it's pretty useful.
We use this pretty heavily.
Yeah, we did. If any of you are ever, working with Realm, this is always a good place to stop to see if, to see what the error was with your request. So.
Yeah. That goes beyond the hackathon too, right? Like I can see how this would be extremely helpful once you have set this up for the hackathon, but
yeah.
But we didn't know what the heck Unity was trying to send over for a good portion of this because we were having some trouble at first, but the logs definitely made it clear to us.
Sweet.
Yeah. Want me to stop sharing?
Yeah, I could switch over to mine.
Cool.
Yes, I mean, I probably won't get through this whole level. It's just meant to just show you how easy it was to mess around with this. Maybe I'll just add a little bit more, or
can you make can you make this a super short level and say if you answer the question correctly, the trophy appears? Is that much harder than it sounds?
We don't have logic in place for that, but I could certainly move the trophy closer.
Sure. Can you
which
just
would end the level?
Have it appear? I guess. How difficult is it to just change it to say once you've received or check the answer and it was correct to.
Do you know one thing?
Yeah.
One thing we didn't do, which I thought we should have, was we didn't use the question box with the leaf on it when the
animation.
We should have done that.
Yeah.
Do you want to switch to that now, or is that a little too?
I don't even know where that asset is right now, though.
Ah.
Doesn't seem to. I mean, we could make this appear on top, maybe.
We had it. I don't know where it's gone. Anyway, it was just a thought.
Somewhere
out there.
But yeah, based on our very very screwy logic, we would have to manually move the trophy somewhere over here if we wanted. Adding custom logic on the question box wouldn't work because that's the same logic we use for everything. For all the question box.
Because you're reusing it for all. That's right. That's fine. Yeah. You can move the trophy closer and call it a level. Or you could have like an extremely tricky question. And you should have a timer too. I'm just scope creep at this point. Oh my God.
Yeah, so much stuff. Let's put this down there. So that way it's hiding there for us.
Oh yes.
And we could also change the controller. So we have something that controls which scenes are which level order happens. So this could be level 2 is how it is, and then it should take us to level 3 after we hit that trophy. But let's go ahead and try it. It might not. Yeah, it did.
Sweet.
So that level controller, what's happening?
Yes, please.
So basically, yeah. So there's different ways to switch between levels. I mean, you could have your logic hard coded in every level, but that seems kind of weird in case you want to change up the order a bit. Like if you think about say the old school Mario, where you could actually go up on top and then cheat and get to the other tubes to skip ahead.
Yes.
It's a good idea to actually have all your levels in place so that way you know how to get to them. But in this case, all that's happening is we're creating an array of the level names, and then we're figuring out what our current level index is. So that way, when we call next level, it just skips the next index. So whatever we have ordered in this array, we don't have any kind of game over. Instead, it just resets to the level. But it makes for a very nice level controller for the entire game.
That's super interesting to see that's all that it's really doing. You would think, coming from a non-game development background, you would think that's a little difficult to implement, but it's just managing which scenes are being loaded. So seeing it in this form and seeing that this is pretty much all the code that it takes to switch scenes and switch levels is nice to know.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, we didn't even need all of this here. If we truly had a naming convention that worked, and we were confident there wasn't going to be like at one point in time we had a game over scene and we had like a menu scene, and you can't just say next index or whatever on those because you might not be done. So it
Right.
made sense to have a level controller.
Nice. Yeah, those are all the polished things at the end, right? That really up the level or up the game,
Yeah,
rather.
but I mean, as far as scripts go, I mean, we've seen the camera script. It's really just following the player around in the X and the Y. The database model matches what we saw in MongoDB Atlas, what Barry had manually entered, and that we can translate to be to and from JSON. The level controller, game data. All we're using here is it's a static variable, static class. Static classes inside of Unity persist through every scene for as long as the game is running, so the entire session. So that way, if you wanted to keep score for the entire game, well, you'd use a static class. So that way, it works between scenes.
Right.
And then likewise, over here, there's the actual score class, which just works with game data, the static variable. So incrementing, banking. So banking, if you fail on a level, your score resets, but it doesn't reset to the entire game. It just resets for whatever you have obtained for that particular level. So after you beat a level, it banks your score, and it just adds new score to it, which could disappear. That makes sense. And then just basic player logic. I mean, none of our files are really more than 100 lines of code. Most of them are much shorter.
No, this
Is there
is
anything I missed, Barry?
Oh yeah, that we hosted it on Realm.
Oh, yeah, man. Show that.
The most
I'm going to share your
important
screen.
part. All right, cool. We're back into the tunnel
Yeah.
vision. So Unity actually lets you compile games as in WebGL. So we noticed that this meant we could actually host the game in Realm. If you guys have the Realm URL there, the URL to the game, you probably noticed that it is actually MongoDB Realm URL that we have the game hosted in. So when we rendered the game or exported it as a WebGL project, we just uploaded all of the files here to our Stitch hosting, and Stitch provided us with Realm provided us with the URL. The URL still uses MongoDB Stitch, which is obviously our legacy name for the Realm Web SDK. But we were given a URL here for the game, and obviously, if you guys have gone to the URL, you can see that the game is hosted inside Realm. So not only are we using Realm for the backend for the game, for the data store, we're actually able to host it as well, which is pretty cool. And it's all free.
sweet. That is super neat because now you could get people to test out your game, right? Before you finally submitted it.
Yeah, we got the hype train going. We sent it around the company and we had people play it. So yeah, it was cool.
Yeah.
Nice.
There was a comment on PRs earlier. If we really wanted to, we could set it up to a CI/CD pipeline, and when we merge people's PRs, it could just auto deploy it to Realm.
Ooh,
And
that's also nice.
I believe Unity has a cloud building service that we could use to make this happen.
So what are next steps for this game? What would, if you could work on this for next week, what would be the next things you would change or update or improve?
Personally, I think we would put the certification exam prep questions in there. Well, some of them anyway. Some of them might be a bit too complex to be in a game, but some of the smaller questions I'd like to put in there to make it a bit more challenging, and maybe try and weight them as they went along, or have them as one subject area per level. And Nick, you had a couple of ideas as well about the leaderboard and stuff, which would be cool.
Oh yeah, definitely. We could make the score actually count. I think the old arcade cabinets where people usually put like a bad word in for their high score in Pac-Man, that kind of thing, where you get to the end or you die, you get a high score, you enter your 3-character name, and it exists in MongoDB.
Sweet.
It'd be pretty cool.
I guess we'll have to wait till next year to see that. Or will you be sharing this and opening this repo to the public soon?
Yeah, we'll make it public.
Yeah.
Probably after this stream. I think I could. I actually don't have the link handy. I'm not logged into my Git, but it'll be in the
fine.
blog post that comes. There's going to be a
Yes.
blog post. The link will be in there for sure.
Yes, so be sure to check out the tutorials once Nic and Barry publish that on the it's developer.mongodb.com, and you'll get that link to the repo once it is published. All right, this was awesome, guys. I loved seeing from beginning to end how you used all the different pieces, and it's super nice to see that you can use all of this in the context of a hackathon and build something really great. So thank you for sharing that.
Cool. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, this is
Anything
fun.
else that you'd like to share, plug? I know you're the plug guy, Nic.
Oh yeah, I am known as the plug guy, right? That's kind of my thing now. So next week, should we share what we're doing next week, Adrian?
Oh, sure.
channel.
So next week, if you've been following us, we do our game dev stream every other Wednesday, and seeing as next week is a holiday week, we're going to do a fun stream next Wednesday. So come back here next time, 10:30. We're going to get some of the MongoDB gang to play Fall Guys, so that should be interesting.
Yeah,
So
we're just
it'll
gonna have
be
a chill
right here.
session.
Yeah. Come by, come ask us anything about MongoDB. We'll be answering your questions in the chat.
Sweet.
And that's pretty much it. So thank you all for joining us. We hope you had fun. We hope you learned something. You can catch this if you missed any part of this on our Twitch videos, and it will also be available on our YouTube playlist. And we will see you next time. See you all.
Thanks, guys. See you later.
Bye bye.